Now, the newly appointed Kenya National Examinations Council has held its first meeting this morning. Former University of Nairobi Vice Chancellor Professor George Magoha was appointed to act as the chairman of the board on interim basis. The appointment was announced by Education Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiangi shortly after he dissolved the previous board following complaints over examination irregularities. Several former officials have been grilled by the police. And on that note, we will now take a look at the new formation of the Kenya National Examination Council. Let's just take a look at those who have come into the new board after the former was dissolved. Of course, as I had earlier mentioned, George Magoha is the chairman of the new Kenya National Examination Council board, and members retained from the old board. Of course, from the KNEC Act, there's 5 members of the board that are quote-unquote quite untouchable, and even as the board was dissolved, these are the 5 that could not be ousted. We have Dr. Belio Kipsang, who is the Principal Secretary of Education, Kamau Thuge, who is the Principal Secretary of Treasury, for Treasury. We have Julius Ouma Juan, who is the Director of the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, Nancy Masharia, who is the Teachers Service Commission Secretary, and Pius Mutisia, who is the Acting CEO of the Quality Assurance Ministry of Education. These are the 5 who, according to the Kenya National Examination Council Act, should be in the board, and 3 more should be appointed by Cabinet Secretary for Education, and that is the same thing that Dr. Matiangi did. He appointed Martin Osangiri Okio and Rosemary C. Saina and Dr. John Onsite. These are the 3 newest members of the Kenya National Examination Council board, making it 8 to add up with the 5 members who are who were not suspended or ousted from the board. Now, the dissolved board, Education Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiangi dissolved the Professor Kabiru Kinyanjui, who was the chairman of the board, and ordered the arrest of 9 senior Kenya National Examination officials over the 2015 Kenya National Examination mix-up. We had irregularities that got the country and the outside world questioning the credibility of examinations in the country. Let's now take a look at those who are currently stand suspended and are undergoing investigations. We have the CEO, Dr. Joseph Kivilu, who is leading the park. He was among those that Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olenkaiseri ordered to record statements with the police over the 2015 examination irregularities. We have Ambia Noor, who is the Senior Deputy Secretary for Examination, also asked to record statements with the police. Maundu Mantezawa, who is the Deputy Secretary for Security. We have Thomas Mackenzie, who is the Principal Examination Secretary. Sarah Majani, who is the Senior Deputy Secretary for Graphics, Bobby Nyagamwai, who is the Senior Deputy Secretary, Geoffrey Gitogo, who is the Senior Deputy Secretary. We also have Michael Ndua, who is the Principal Secretary for Supply Chain Management Office, and Richard Mwangangi, the Deputy Secretary for the Council or the board. These are the 9, just to remind you, these are the 9 who currently were ordered by Interior Cabinet Secretary Joseph Olenkaiseri to write statements or record statements with the police, and this is a story we will definitely be keeping you up to date on as the first board meeting meets today for the Kenya National Examination Council. And still on matters education, we will now be joined by our reporter Michelle Ngele, who is joining us from Parliament, where Education Cabinet Secretary Dr. Fred Matiangi is currently held up in a meeting with the Parliamentary Education Committee led by their chair, Sabina Chege. Michelle Ngele, what are the latest developments? We understand that the media has been locked out.
Absolutely, Ankisa. Well, the Cabinet Secretary, Fred Matiangi, has actually just stepped out of that meeting with the National Committee on Education. He has, however, refused to give his comments to the media on what they were discussing in there. But Akisa, what I can tell you, after the journalists were locked out, it is a very heated closed-door meeting ensued, we were able to get some information from some members of the committee. And one of the issues that they were discussing, an issue which the Cabinet Secretary deemed as a very sensitive issue that should be discussed in camera, was the cancellation of the 5,101 results. There was a petition that was filed with the committee that the cancellation of those results be reversed because it was done in without any specific criteria. Now, the petition specifically says that members of the Kenya National Union of Teachers had raised alarm over the workings of the Kenya National Examinations Council prior to the KCSE examinations. Now, the Ministry of Education went ahead to ignore those concerns for the Kenya National Union of Teachers and went ahead to issue the examinations as they were. So the petition says it is the fault of NEC that those results were released. So they either reversed those 5,101 results that were cancelled or nullified all the results of all the candidates who took part in that examination. But other than that, what was being discussed here was also the massive fraud that has been discovered in the Kenya National Examinations Council. Just this week, the Directorate of Criminal Investigations released a report showing that a cartel of 5 top officials in NEC has been operating and has been responsible for national examination leakages for years, working together with school principals as well as the police to offer them security while they were doing those their dealings. And that cartel is said to have worked with the full knowledge of the exam body. So these are issues that the Cabinet Secretary was answering to in front of the National Committee. What I can tell from the meeting here today, however, is that members of the committee themselves are mixed. They are split between whether they should nullify the results of the entire examination or whether they should only reverse the cancelled results of the 5,000 candidates, like you said.
Now, Michelle, even as we have 9 officials from the Kenya National Examination Council recording statements, are we looking at a committee that wants dire consequences for those found guilty, even with the report that you have mentioned on how examinations for the year 2015 were stolen?
Absolutely. Well, what members of this committee say is that the 5,101 students are being punished alone, but there was an entire cartel of people who are yet to be punished. And so they say whether the results were dirty, the students should be allowed to keep with those results, or the council, goes ahead and nullifies all the results. The members here have an issue with the fact that those 5,000 results were cancelled on the basis of a recommendation from NEC. And their concern is that you cannot possibly take recommendations from NEC, the very same council that has been discredited by the Ministry of Education. Now, this morning there was a meeting by the new NEC board discussing the way forward, and it was a closed-door meeting, but some of the issues that were expected to be discussed is whether they would be suspending the members of the dissolved NEC board, including the CEO, Joseph Kizilu, and the 8 others who are currently facing an ongoing investigation over the exam leakages. And so we're yet to hear what was discussed in that meeting. But if they did choose to suspend those officials, then it means that the board may appoint an acting CEO as investigations are underway. So it was definitely something that was on the agenda for that meeting this morning, to suspend members of the former NEC board.
So, Michelle, essentially the National Committee, or the Parliamentary Committee on Education, is asking for the reversal of the 5,101 students whose examinations were cancelled, examination results were cancelled?
Yes, they are. They say that those exams were cancelled on the recommendation of the Kenya National Examinations Council, but they are asking the Cabinet Secretary to go beyond that report forwarded by NEC, because that is the same council that has then been discredited. So the report that they used, the criteria that they used to cancel those results then was not fair and was not eligible. So they are calling for the reversal and fighting for the results of those 5,101 candidates to ensure that they don't suffer for that rot that has been going on. In fact, many of them are asking questions. We have schools like Moi University that recorded over 300 days, and none of the results in that school were cancelled. And so the questions being raised here as to the criteria that was used. And then again, again, when you consider the rot that has been revealed in the Kenya National Examinations Council, you find that these top officials running the cartel that has been selling examination material has also been working with school principals from the big schools, and these are the big national and county schools. And so that means that many of these schools were compromised, and many of the exams were set about in 2012. So that was 5 years before 4 years before. Normally exams should be set 3 years prior. And so questions are being asked of what will be done now? What will be the new criteria of setting examination? And what the National Council on Education feels is that the Cabinet Secretary needs to go beyond just dissolving the NEC board and putting a new board in place. It needs to have a complete overhaul in all the workings of the Kenya National Examinations Council. Now, of course, Education CS Fred Matiangi has refused to comment and speak to the media, but we are waiting to hear from more of the members of the National Committee on what they thought of that incident.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. That was our reporter, Michelle Ngele, reporting from the Parliament buildings, where Education Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiangi has just stepped out of a meeting or concluded a meeting with the Parliamentary Education Committee led by Sabina Chege. And among the things that Michelle Ngele is telling us is that the committee is asking for the reversal of the examination results that were cancelled for 5,101 students in the 2015 Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education examinations.